All right, we are here once again at the NMA 2024. Nice socks, by the way. Doctor, can you please tell us your name, your area of specialty, and where you're located?
My name is Dr. Winston Price. I'm working in Southwest Georgia, in Bainbridge, and I'm a pediatrician, board certified, and loving it.
All right, pediatrician. So we've got a lot of parents that are on our platform, and they've always have questions about their kids. So, first question is and this is coming up so much nowadays. Mental health. Is there a food connection to how people are feeling that you've seen? I don't know. Is there some, you can expound on that.
Yeah, absolutely. When, the expression that people are what they eat is becoming ever more evident these days as we find out about the connection between additives in the food. We find out about the connection between how foods are prepared and source of food. All foods that have the same name in terms of what the food is doesn't bespeak where it came from. Whether it is a foreign food that comes into our culture, whether it has been screened, whether it's fresh food that's been farmed and checked by the USDA, all of that plays a factor with regard to the quality of the food. And we now know that some of the things that the kids like in terms of coloring and flavoring can have significant deleterious effects, harmful effects on the children, both in terms of their mental health, but also in terms of their everyday growth and development.
Wow. So when you see patients, is there one or maybe two things that you wish they would do or wish they would know before coming to see you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we educate the parents as much as we can through posters and flyers and the like, but making sure parents know three things with regard to the health and wellness of their children when it comes to food. One, learn how to read labels. Learn the importance of the different components. The three major components, obviously, in terms of the fats, the sugar, carbohydrates, and the protein. It's important to know those quantities, but also the sources in terms of knowing whether it is animal produced, whether it is plant-based, whether it's been processed, and what kinds of dyes, chemicals, and other elements are in that food. And then basically teaching parents how to shop. You want to make sure they're going to a source of food where they're getting fresh food. And we talk a lot about food deserts. People who live in rural communities and other communities where they're impacted by some of the other social determinants of poor health outcome. Those are the communities where they're not going to get fresh food. And we know that's important in terms of the quality of food that those individuals receive as well. And so it's important for us to teach parents how to shop for fresh food, maybe use some of the resources of Feeding America, which has mobile vans with fresh edible food that is a higher quality than some of the local bodegas. Don't want to knock the local entrepreneurs who are trying to make a living, but if you're not going to produce and provide the quality of food that is essential for the growth and development and mental health of the children, then we want to bring in fresh food. And the case in point, you go into some of the bodegas and what they're going to have on their shelves are high carbohydrate. They're going to have the energy drinks. They're going to have the sodas rather than the fruit juices and also the foods that are not processed. So a lot of white meat, a lot of white bread that is processed and bleached rather than whole grain. And the reason parents do that in the food desert is it's there, it's available, and it's cheaper than the higher quality food.
Yeah.
And so when you have individuals who have not only the food insecurity in terms of where the food can be obtained in terms of the food deserts, but the resources to be able to afford food. And so parents with kids are more likely to put food on the table, irrespective of the quality, just to make sure they feed the mouths. And then the last thing is in terms of making sure that they know about all of the Feeding America and free food resources. We saw that expand, obviously, during COVID because of all of the issues and the shutdowns, that there were more people in, and forgive the comparison, but in Cadillacs and Lexus on food lines to receive food. But it's not a shame that you're going to use the resources of a food bank.
That's good.
Because if you're gonna compromise the quality of food of your child or the rest of your family just to be proud and say I'm going into a bodega or food or a supermarket and buying substandard food, that doesn't help the growth and development of your children.
Wow. Doctor, you hit on so many good points. Going back a little bit, you said first point was read your label. Now, when we read the label, what should we be looking for? Is there a carbohydrate or protein or a fat and sugar content that we need to stay away from? What are the numbers that we should be looking for? What should we be staying away from?
Absolutely. So you want to be staying away from foods that have a high fat content, foods that have added sugar. So if you have a food product, whether it's a pastry or it's a bread product or it's a beverage, you don't want it having 15 and 20% added sugar, because that's only going to lead to the risk of developing obesity and diabetes. And so you want the proper balance of those foods to have about 20 to 30% of the food content should say protein.
Okay.
You can have another maybe 30 or 40% and up to 50% in terms of fat. That's your storage energy that you're going to use over the course of the day. And try to keep that carbohydrate content down to 10 or 15% total. And then look at the salt. You shouldn't be having lots of added salt. We know that people of color, particularly African Americans, are more at risk for high blood pressure. And if you're consuming a food that's high in salt, you're just making it easier for that silent killer to cause problems and cause damage to your heart, damage to your kidneys, and lead you to a long-term problem in terms of chronic disease.
Oh. So you said 50% fat? Did we hear you correctly on that?
Yeah, but 50% good fat.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What's good fat? Tell us what that is.
Well, good fat is the unsaturated fats.
Okay.
You want to make sure if you're buying meat, you want to look at the lean quality of that meat. So the leaner that meat is, the more the content of that fat is going to be a high quality fat.
Okay.
And so you don't want 20, 30% fat in the meat that you purchase, because that's not going to give you the balance. And then when you're getting things like butter, you want to go to the vegetable oils as much as possible. Try to avoid the dairy butter, although it's a good product. You don't want to go overboard with that, because the higher cholesterol content, depending on what your body state is, whether you're thin habitus or whether you're getting to the point of obesity, you want to keep that high cholesterol, particularly low density cholesterol, down to a minimum.
Okay. So should we be looking for, this is just the arbitrary question, should we be looking for butter alternatives? Are those healthier? That's another question.
Yeah. And it's a difficult question. We know that some of the alternatives are not as good as others. So I know a lot of people look for the soy component butters. Others look for the ones that say almost butter, or imagine, you can't believe it's not butter.
Right.
So one of the things that we don't want to put all of the onus on people to become super nutritionists in terms of the knowledge base.
Yes.
Although there are a number of avenues for them to learn more about quality food and understanding labels. But we have a dietary guidelines for the American people, which is a Bible, if you will, on proper nutrition, based on the science, based on what we know is good in terms of the quality. And parents can use that as a means of not only understanding about food and food labels, but they can use it as a guideline, a recipe guideline for the week for their children, knowing that they're picking foods that have been studied through a number of nutritionists, registered dietitians, and they will be picking a food that's better. And it's culturally based now. In this last 5 years, it's renewed every 5 years. It's culturally based, so you can have a Latinx type of food blend. You can have a more traditional American food blend, and you can have a Mediterranean food blend, so that people feel the culture in the foods that they're eating and still are eating a better quality food.
Okay, just one more question, keeping on this food line.
Sure.
We get a lot of questions now because it's a hot topic, it's popular, about plant-based. But the question is, plant-based, a lot of plant-based products are processed.
That's right.
Does that make them unhealthy or healthy? Just because, people say it's not meat, so they think it's healthier. But can you please tell us the truth?
So the expression I'm going to give you is one of all things in moderation. And so while there can be alternative beverages that people have been gravitating to because they think, all right, I'm not going to eat or drink any dairy products because it's coming from a four-legged animal, and they're telling me that the meat is bad, not only for myself but for the environment. But that's all in moderation. There are certain 13 essential nutrients that you're only going to get at cost from a dairy product. And so avoiding dairy and avoiding meats entirely is not healthy.
Wow.
Now, you can have a little bit of a alternative meat, but blend it with your dairy and your other components to make sure you're getting all the essential vitamins and minerals that you need on a daily basis. And again, you can use the resources. The Novidan is the National Organization of Blacks in Dietetics and Nutrition, and they're available. They have a lot of helpful hints on their website to help people figure out what kinds of foods they need to get, and they'll talk them through. If you have other chronic conditions or special needs, they'll help walk you through in terms of putting together a daily plan to be healthy.
Awesome. So just reeling it back to pediatrics, are there, we've got a lot of parents out there, are there particular habits that parents could start to form in their child now to make sure that they live a healthy, long life? What are some, besides the food aspect,
Yes.
what can we do?
So, the food is one component in terms of making sure that we get more fruits and vegetables into the kids. Less than 40% of individuals across the board are consuming enough fruits and vegetables based on guidelines. The highest amount is in the early years, the first 2 years, and then again into the ultra seniors who are dependent on supplements. But for the most part, across the age span from 4 years of age to adult age, less than 50% are getting enough fruits and vegetables in their diet. Now that said, the other things that are going to cause problems to people health-wise is lack of physical exercise. Portion size, making sure you can use a dessert plate to prepare your food for dinner.
Okay.
And most people,
Huh.
you have a big plate, you fill the plate thinking, well, that's what I need to eat.
Right.
But most people are consuming more calories than they need nutritionally. And what happens with that is you store all of that extra fat. And being at risk for diabetes and hypertension, cardiovascular disease, hip problems, you don't want to overeat and not exercise because you're just going to put yourself at risk for long-term chronic disease.
Wow. So, okay, another pediatric question. We didn't have this growing up, but it's rampant now. Tablets and phones. Is there a magic number of hours, number of minutes that a child should only be on their tablet or phone or whatever?
Yeah, our reference that we try to teach parents is 1 hour per day,
Okay.
and ideally 1 hour of supervised access. Children under the age of probably 10 or 12 should not have an independent mobile device. And certainly if that child is also not getting out and doing some type of physical activity, whether outside or within the household, then you're doing a detriment to that child. We also lose that psychological connection between the caretaker, the parent, and the child. Because if they're on a tablet, we know as adults, we're always talking to our friends and they're busy texting. You're not connecting in a way that's healthy. We also know that kids who spend more than 2 hours to 3 hours on mobile devices are more likely to put themselves at risk for obesity and poor nutrition.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Whoa, doctor, you hit you hitting with a lot of gems today. All right, last question. Was there a defining moment in your life or something that made you want to become a physician?
Well, I spent a lot of time in my early career with my aunt who used to take us to different outdoor activities, amusement parks, and to see theaters and other activities. And you know, we would go out to places where one of us was going to fall and scrape a knee or twist an ankle. And she was always very helpful in trying to put the Band-Aid on and using salve and other things to take care of the scratches. And I was fascinated by that. And then I had the good fortune of being around two black physicians, one who happened to be my Sunday school teacher and the other who happened to live in the apartment where my parents were. And so I had role models early. That's a lot of unusual trend for people interested in the health professions. So it wasn't something that teachers could tell me when I was 5, 6, 7, all the way up to 12 that you don't want to do healthcare because it's too hard. There are other trade jobs that you can do. I had role models that I could look at and go back to school and say, I don't care what you say, I know I can do this because I'm living the experience, and I think that's important. And that's what we try to give back through the National Medical Association and also through the W. Montague Cobb Institute, is to create those role models, those voices of support for young individuals trying to decide how they can navigate this health profession. And if I can say just one other thing, and it didn't come as a question, you know, parents always come in and they're concerned about the child development or their mental development. They may be concerned if they have a little bit of a headache. You know, I want you to do a CAT scan because they may have a brain tumor. We're losing kids from birth to 24 years of age because of violence.
Wow.
Most of it related to firearm.
Really?
And so the number one cause of death for individuals between 0 and 24 years of age are related to violence, whether knives, whether drugs, or firearms. And so we really have to have a conscious decision of how we want this society to go because, you know, the assault rifles, the handguns, 73% of kids know where the handgun is in a household, even when parents think they
They
didn't.
don't know.
And youth killing youth as young as 7 and 8 years of age is not the way to create an environment for our kids.
Wow, that's happening that much.
That much, yes,
Wow.
yes. And in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
there's no other developed country that has numbers comparable to the United States.
That is crazy. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure the parents are tuned in for that. That's insightful. So, Doctor, where can last question? Where can people find you online or find what you're doing online?
Yeah, so they can go to the Montague, you can go to the cobbinstitute.org, and I'm available to be contacted through that portal. They can also go to the pcom.edu, which is the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. And then they can also reach me through cyber, CYBERNMA@yahoo.com, and I'll see their special message.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for what you do. Thank you for being here, joining us live here at the NMA 2024. You've heard it here first. All right. Thank you.